By the way, why did you pick a $4 million deal, John, right? Because it's a pretty big deal. When you got started in the program, were you thinking, I'm going to go do a $4 million deal? Or what were you thinking in the beginning? Or were you thinking $4 million deal? But isn't that surprising though, right? Because a lot of people say, "Oh, let me get 10 years of flipping or a rental experience, and then,
Oh, yeah.
maybe I'll have the confidence enough to talk to brokers." And here you are telling me it took take a month or two, and you've
Yeah.
never done a deal before. And by the way, why did you pick a $4 million deal, John? Right? Because it's a pretty big deal. When you got started in the program, were you thinking, "I'm going to go do a $4 million deal," or what were you thinking in the beginning, or were you thinking $4 million deal?
Not at all. No. Getting into it, I was thinking, okay, I'm just gonna do a little small, eight. It was funny in my head. I was like, okay, I'm gonna do an 8 unit, and then I kind of learned more and more, and I'd be like, okay, I'm gonna do it. I'm gonna do like a 15, and then it kind of built to the point where I was like, you know what? I've got this mentorship program. I got this team behind me. I want to go big or go home. I want to make this happen. I mean, if I've got this team, and really, there's a lot of times I've listened to your podcast and all that. I mean, really, the process is the same, whether it's $1 million or $20 million. And I'm like, you know what? A $4 million, it's a good size. I like it. The only difference is really going to be the capital raise, but everything else, you still got an LOI, PSA, you got all the different pieces.
Here we are making an offer and pursuing a $4 million deal. Did you already have the money raised? In other words, what I'm saying is, what gave you the confidence to actually take a swing at this deal?
Um, I mean, it's just, I mean, the fact that I knew that I had the team behind me and I knew that I had, the abilities. In life, I've always kind of looked at stuff like, okay, you know what? Life's going to throw you curveballs or challenges, and as long as you take it one step at a time, you're going to get there. You're going to make it happen. And so that's kind of where it was. It was kind of more of I almost wanted to set the goal so high that I've really got to work for this. And I like, and I've said it a couple times, I mean, I like the challenge. So that was kind of thing. I did not have any capital raised before that. I did feel like with my design build landscape firm, we do a lot of high end landscapes. I was like, oh, I've got the clientele. They're going to spend the money on landscapes. They're going to put money into a deal like this. Um, that's how I felt, yeah, going into it.
Yeah, that's interesting. Yeah, I just sense that you are doing just the next thing without thinking too far ahead, which is actually it looks like it sounds a little bit, unwise to do that. But I found it's the best way to proceed because you can't have everything figured out in the beginning. And people who try to get everything figured out in the beginning, they never start because it's very difficult to find everything in the beginning. So somehow how are you able to deal with uncertainty? How are you able to move forward without having figured everything out?
I mean, it boils down to, you know, the willingness to learn and fail. I mean, it's the willingness to, you know, take on those challenges and take that leap of faith in situations where, a lot of people would just sit, like you said, sit back and say, you know what, I'm not comfortable with this. I don't know enough to pursue this, but it's like, you know what, I'm going to just take that step out and hopefully my foot lands good, and I'll learn. And there was plenty of times, even throughout this deal, where I take one step forward and three steps back. Okay. All right. I got to keep at it, and hit it hard. So it's really just that, I guess that, you know, I don't know, just that drive to get there because I really wanted to get this thing closed.
Yeah, yeah, absolutely. So what happened?
Um, so what happened was we got it under contract. I believe it was July of 23. And that's, things were good. Capital raising was, a lot easier at that time. And so got under contract, started going through the process. Everything was going along. It was 100% me. So I did not have a partner, a fellow GP in the deal at the time. That's lesson one learned. So I didn't start off with one. So then I needed to get a sponsor just because I hadn't been in real estate. I needed to, and so I was able to hook up with a sponsor that came in as another GP, but she came in after I'd already put up all the EMD cost. I was, put in all the soft costs, was paying for inspections, surveys, all that stuff. So anyway, she came in. So now she's helping with the capital raise. We bring in a couple other capital raisers off of them GP positions. All in all, we had one extension built into the PSA for additional EMD. So I had the MD to get under contract. Then we had to use that extension. And then I used 6 more extensions after that. Yeah. So, um, and and the good thing is all 6 of those were free. None of them cost me any more EMD. Because as everybody knows, during those times, that's when capital raising it was getting harder and harder and harder to raise money. By the end of it, long story short, really long story short, we got to it was January of 24 was my final closing date. And I finally had to have the dreaded conversation with my broker. I can't close it. I'm out of options. I really don't know what else to do because the last month or two of the year, I kind of got a little bit more transparent on, okay, it's the capital raising is the issue.
This
We
is
had,
where interest rates were going up, right? Pretty rapid
yeah,
during the end of 23, right? That was the
yeah,
time.
yeah.
Yeah. It was very
And
difficult.
yeah, yeah. And, we had people that wanted to do, try to get money in by the end of the year, but it was like we had this, hey, a lot of people, we'd have these soft commits of $500,000 or 750,000, but we couldn't get them to put that money in the bank. And so, all in all, told the broker, in January, I was like, I'm out of options, and in my head, I'm like, all that EMD and soft cost gone. Hey, this
Mhm.
seller's going to have a great Christmas. They're gonna, get all this money. So the good thing that I think helped out, all right, so I'm at this point, but kind of my relationship with the broker had really grown a lot, and even with the seller, um, which is not always the case. You don't always get to meet the actual seller, and so when I would go to the property, he's my age. He owns another business. He's a small company. He's got builds barns and in Pennsylvania. And I made a point when I was up there doing some of my inspections. He was there working. He worked the property even after he had it under contract. I made a point really to go shake his hand and let him know, hey, I'm a regular guy like you trying to do this. And so he was able to help me obviously get to that point. So those free extensions. January, told the broker that I was out. I couldn't do it. I'm sitting there, holding my head down. I was like, God, I didn't make it. And what happened? So, so then I'm talking to Julie Peterson. I'm sure a lot of your listeners know and heard of Julie Peterson. She's great. I work with her with the lending, but I was talking to her and she was like, "Hey, John, I've got a couple of experienced operators I can um, introduce you to. They may want to take over the contract." I was like, "Hey, I'm up for anything at this point." So I called the broker and say, "Hey, I'm singing a new song at this point. I'm like, hey, I may have people. I'm not talking about bringing in a chunk of money or anything. I have people that have a ton of deals, a lot of experience. They want to They might want to take over the PSA or the contract." And so, fortunately, he was like, "Well, good thing you called. We were releasing the money out of title tomorrow morning." So I had caught it less than 24 hours from my money being released that was entitled. And so he was actually willing to entertain it. I took these 2 new potential GPs, met them in Tennessee. So the property's 5 hours from my house. Met them there. They liked the deal. And we ended up going back under contract through them. And then still struggled a little bit with capital raising, not as much. They had a lot better network that they were able to pull from. And then we're finally able to get it closed 17 months later, which was November. I think it was November of 24. So 17 months to close this thing. Yeah.
That's a long deal.